a break. Do what, to have a party? Yeah, I love it, right? Oh, there is. That would be quite the party. Oh my goodness. Trying to be all prepared here. All right. Well, I'm really excited to be here today. What do you guys know about today's talk? Did anybody give you any information? Did you? Nothing? Just on the flyer. Okay, great. That's really helpful for me to know. From what you saw on the flyer, what is it that you want to get out of this conversation? And then I'll introduce myself and tell you what we're going to talk about. But based on that flyer, what really piqued your interest? Anything? Dealing with stress. Dealing with stress. Does anybody here have stress? No. I love the sarcasm in the air. That's right? Okay, great. We're going to talk about stress. What particularly might you want to know about stress? Is there anything that, like, when you think about stress, stands out for you? Okay, is stress being a feeling more overwhelming than other feelings? Yes. Okay, and how does it impact your life?
You're focusing on that more than
yeah, it hijacks you out of your life, right? You focus on stress and all the things that you could be putting your effort, attention, and energy into, your family, your work, your hobbies, get hijacked by stress. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about who I am, and then we'll talk about stress. Is there any other things that you guys wanted to get out of today, aside from like what stress is, how to manage it? It'd be helpful to know what it is too, right? So my name is Lisa Marini. I am a brain-based coach. Has anybody heard of that before? Nope. Every single time I say it, I get the big like, what the heck is a brain-based coach? Essentially, I help people understand things such as stress, or your behaviors, or your reactions based on what the brain is doing, right? None of us really have ever been taught how the brain works. It is, you know, we learned it maybe in middle school biology of here's the regions of the brain, etc. But if you think about it, the brain is at the source of everything. Every decision you make, every reaction you have, how well you sleep, if you're focused or not, if you're stressed or not. And so we go through life without really knowing how to operate the organ that controls everything. So in my coaching practice, I do this with groups, I do it with organizations, I am a one-on-one coach. I help people understand this organ, how to better manage your life, because now you have the user's manual for the brain, right? So this is what I do. I came from in industry and construction. So I spent 17 years in the multifamily construction industry. Is anybody familiar with the multifamily industry? Yeah, it's a tough industry to be in. I started when I was really young. And not only is it hard, you know, my projects were $80 to $100 million projects. Not only is it hard to manage a project on that scale, I did it as a female. And even today, I would say there's probably 0 females as superintendents in the multifamily industry. Now that's based on the people that I know. Of course there are females, but back then there definitely weren't. There weren't even females in the field, which you see a lot of now, thank goodness. But it was incredibly difficult for me to do this job, to prove myself, the hours that I had to put in, 80 hours a week. It was a massive amount of stress. I eventually founded my own coaching practice to get away from that. But what I want to tell you of stress and how it impacted me was in this multifamily construction industry, it started to present as health issues. Chronic migraines, hair was falling out, had memory loss, which was crazy because in my late 20s, early 30s, this amount of memory loss I had was kind of scary to think about the amount of memory loss I have. And I thought, that's really weird. What's wrong with me? Why am I broken? And I had even ended up in the hospital several times because of these chronic migraines, etc. So I, like everyone else, goes to a million different doctors. And every doctor I met with, whether they were from the eastern side of things, western side of things, specialists, neurologists, etc., every single one told me what? What do you think they told me was the cause of my issues? Stress. Stress is the source of all of your physical issues. Okay, great. I'm too tough for stress. I don't know about you, but I am pretty sure that I am a badass, if you will. I was managing these multifamily projects. Stress wasn't going to stop me. If I could deal with all the mayhem in the field and all of the stuff that goes on out there, surely I could manage this thing called stress. So do any of you try to out-tough, outsmart stress? Yes, because this is what we do. And that's what I thought. Forget this. I don't need the pills that you're going to give me or the treatments that you're thinking to give me. I'm just going to out-tough it because I'm strong. Well, one day I went to a conference with a neuroscientist, and he put up on the board what your brain looks like under stress. And it blew my mind. Here I'm seeing a physical thing happening based on what's going on in the world, right? Somebody's reaction to stress is physically impacting their brain. I had this aha moment. No different than me trying to outthink bad vision. We don't do that, right? We accept it. You're wearing glasses, right? You accept the vision being impaired, so you go and you manage it by giving glasses. You go to an optometrist and you handle it. Or any other issue or ailment we might have. But with stress causing an impact on the brain, I just thought I could be better and smarter and tougher than. And then I realized, wow, it's no different than having bad vision or anything else. So that piqued my curiosity. And I really wanted to understand what stress actually was. Does anybody really know what stress is? No. Maybe. You know what it feels like, right? You know what it takes you away from in your life. We've never really been taught what stress is. We have it be this big nebulous thing, this big thing that comes over and takes over our lives and distracts us from what we want to do, and it loses our focus and has us really potentially feeling sick, right? So I think it's important to understand what stress is. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Well, that's interesting. There we go. Not coming up. So I want to help you understand not only what stress is, but to help you understand your reactions to stress, because I think that's helpful, right? If we understand why we behave and react the way we do, then we can do something about it. Otherwise, it's this thing that is impacting us that we just fall victim to. So I want to do that, and I want to give you tools of how to manage stress. Does that sound good? Do you guys have tools right now to manage stress? You just white knuckle it through life and go, oh God, I hope tomorrow is better. I hope this stuff doesn't continue.
I escaped to the hills.
The escape to the hills. Good. You take a break. You do a flight response. You get away. Yeah. Is it helpful? Or do you come back? Okay. So when you come back, is it back induction into the stress? And no, it does. It's satisfying for you. Good. A lot of people don't have the tools to manage stress, right? Anybody else have tools that you use that are effective or maybe ineffective? Exercise. We're going to talk about why that can be very helpful. Yeah. Yeah. Most of us just white knuckle it, right? Like that's what I did. 17 years in the construction industry. And I was like, oh my God, please let tomorrow be better. And it wasn't. And it got worse. Okay. So we're going to look at the importance of understanding different brain states to navigate your stressful, busy life. Okay. Wow. I don't know what's happening. We're just going to. Okay. What are things that are currently creating stress for you? Work. work. And what is it about work that creates stress? Is it the workload? Is it the stuff that you're dealing with in work? Like, what would you say is the thing that's creating the stress for you? The people at work. The people, okay. And is it conflict? I get it, right? And I know we don't have to like say details here, but yeah, it could be conflict that people disagree or that there's whatever, right? So, and that's enough to talk about that. There are things called humans that make it very difficult to not have stress, right? Okay, so the people at work. What are other things that are causing you guys stress? Family. Work-life balance, right? Feeling like, wow, I have this really precious, amazing thing at home called my family. Do you have kids? Yeah. Okay, and how old are your kids?
My daughter is 8 and my son's 10.
Awesome, 8 and 10. I'm gonna give you some great, anybody else have kids in here? Yeah, I'm gonna give you some tools also, because all of this information translates from work to life, to personal relationships, to friend relationships. It's just life, right? And here you are, have these really precious people in your life, and you have this thing called a job where you have to somehow balance and manage. And how do you do it without, right? And then you're burned out, and you're like, gosh, I don't have time for myself, and blah. Yeah. So family can create stress. Not that it's dysfunctional, it could be, but just the want and desire to want to be around family. Yeah. What's causing you stress? Family, work, kids? Kids getting hurt. Oh, you have hurt kids? Woo! I have teenage boys. I'm with you. Like every time you turn around. Goodness. Okay. Well, that's a real threat. That's definitely stressful. But the balance of it, right? And making sure that they're safe and protected. And those are real things. Yeah.
Not for me, but for some, lack of money.
Lack of money. Absolutely. Lack of money, fear of not being able to have the job with COVID, right? I have up here COVID. My gosh, this whole thing of COVID was just crazy that we had to go through, right? And we can look, the future could be stressful because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And stress, right? Just a general sense of all of these things. Okay, I want to take you all through a little exercise because I want you to experience something so we can back into this conversation. So if you would, just close your eyes for a moment. And with your eyes closed, I really want you to think of something that creates a lot of stress for you, or maybe frustration. Maybe it's worry. And really replay the scenario. Remember who was in the room with you or the conversations you had. Start to notice your emotional shift. Start to notice if you're feeling angry or frustrated, sad, maybe overwhelmed. And if you can't identify the emotion, that's okay. Just notice what's there. And now begin to feel the physical sensation in your body. What's shifted? Maybe your heart is beating faster. Tension in your shoulders, maybe your jaw is clenching. Notice what's happening in your body now. Go ahead and open your eyes. Shake that out. It's terrible. Nobody wants that. What was the emotions that you started to feel? What would you say the emotions were that came up? What's that? Tension. And did you physically feel the tension in your body? Yeah. And where did you notice it in your body? Your shoulders. Are you like this? Yeah.
I didn't even notice it when you said it, but I was punching my teeth.
Yeah. Like, isn't that amazing? Yeah, you didn't notice it.
I'm like, oh yeah, because I'm doing that, aren't I?
This is what's crazy, that you do this and are unaware of it. No different than the shoulder thing, right? I was in your shoulders. Let me tell you, I've got great traps. I get comments on them all the time. People are like, whoa, you work out. And I'm like, ooh, it's called stress. Thank you for my good traps. Because I walk around like this. But the jaw clenching, isn't that amazing that you do it and are aware of it? Yeah. How about you? Did you have any sensations, emotions?
Anger.
And
Yes.
I get it. Anger is a very normal emotion
Yeah.
to this. Okay. What I want to tell you is that this wasn't real. Bear with me. Yes, it's real in your life. I'm not discrediting the fact that you have whatever that worry, stress, or frustration was going on in your life, because you do. But you don't have it right now. Right now, in this moment, we're sitting in a room. You're not having to work. You get a little break from the day. You're listening to some new information. But your brain and body responded as if there were imminent danger. As if a burglar walked through the front door. As if the fire alarm went off and the room started to fill with smoke. Your brain cannot distinguish a thought from real danger. Now that's a big deal. That's a big deal because think about how many times a day you do this. How many times a day do you worry? How many times a day are you in the future thinking, oh my gosh, I can't pay my bills? Or where my kid's gonna get hurt? Or I can't deal with that person at work one more day because I'm gonna lose it and up and quit and go and sell coconuts on the beach in Jamaica. Right? I know you've thought that because I think it's
Yeah.
right, yeah, let's go. We do this how many times? 20, 30, 50, 100 times a day? All the heads are like, yes, we do this. Your brain thinks there is imminent danger that many times a day. Think that's good? No. Let me tell you what happens. Yay, okay. Right now in this moment, just in this little exercise where I had you close your eyes, I had you think of the stress, worry, frustration, all of your resources went right here to the center of your brain called the limbic center, also known as the fight and flight response, which you're also familiar with, okay? Because your brain cannot determine a thought from real stress, it is preparing you for danger. Whoop, all the resources go here. What happens? We engage our sympathetic nervous system. Why do you think our shoulders are up here? Why do you think our jaw is clenched? Why do you think our breathing gets short and shallow? Why does our heart start to race in stressful situations? Your brain thinks there is danger, so it is ready to fight off the danger or get the heck out of Dodge, or maybe freeze, right? Some of us are fight response, some of us are flight response, some of us are freeze response, some of us are all three. So you can start to notice your physical response to stress. This is why, because your brain thinks it's danger and it's getting you ready. Your brain's doing a great job, right? What happens when our resources go to the center of the brain? I said we go into a sympathetic nervous arousal state. What does that mean? The resources from the midline of your body, your digestion, your immune system, your reproductive system, all of your normal body systems, they dial down. And the resources reallocate to your extremities so you can fight or run. This is why when we have a lot of stress, we have digestive issues, we gain weight, we get sicker and stay sicker, so our immune system's dialed down, our libido is low, we have a hard time connecting with our partners, all because your brain is like, oh my God, we're in survival mode all the time. We don't have time for any of that. We're not gonna reproduce. We're not gonna deal with any of that. We need to be prepared for the war that we are fighting every minute of every day. Because we do this in the shower. How many of you go to yoga trying to like calm and relax and we're like in downward dog and all we're thinking about is our boss and how like upset we are about it, right? Ooh, yeah, great relaxation, right? So that's physically what happens. This is why we feel our heart racing and all of those symptoms that happen when we're stressed. I want to briefly touch on the impact that it has on our physical body because there are two hormones that get released when we go into this fight and flight limbic response. What do you think the hormones are? Any guesses? What's that? Cortisol and adrenaline. Adrenaline, right? Adrenaline amps us up, gets us ready to fight, run, whatever we need to do. Cortisol has a bad reputation, okay? And I'll tell you the bad reputation. Well, let me just tell you now, because we'll get it out of the way. Give you the bad news first. Cortisol can actually damage our cells in chronic amounts in our body. If we are in this limbic response, I'm just going to say the number 50 because, you know, let's be gentle on ourselves here. 50 times a day. We're in the shower, we're in yoga, we're at work, we have that phone call, we're stressed about the future 50 times a day. Every time we release cortisol and it chronically stays in our system, it can damage our cells. When our cells get damaged, they can no longer process glucose. That's their job. When they don't do that, they end up releasing something called free radicals. Has anybody heard of free radicals? It would be like watching that dump truck driving down the street spewing dirty exhaust. That's a free radical in your body, to give you a nice little picture of it. And what do you think it does to your body? Creates inflammation. When we look at disease, when we look at the ailments, we go to the doctor. Chronic migraines, who had those? My hair falling out, who had that? All of these other diseases as well. Type 2 diabetes, inflammatory based. Coronary heart disease, inflammatory based. Gout, arthritis, fibromyalgia. All of these are inflammatory based. So when we go to the doctor, and the doctor goes, oh my God, you got a lot of inflammation. You're like, yeah, I'm pro, I'm good at it. I'm like the best at inflammation. We often think the way to address it, which is true, is to cut out alcohol or sugar or gluten or dairy, the things that are creating bodily inflammation. Yes, all very true. But what they're not talking about is this guy. They're not talking about the impact of stress, our own internal thoughts, and these things that then create chronic amount of cortisol, which then damages cells, which releases free radicals, which then creates bodily inflammation. So our joints that ache when we get older, well, maybe we're really stressed out, right? So this is what physically happens. Now I want to tell you the good part of cortisol, or at least when it's working well, and it can explain some of your behaviors. So when cortisol gets released in the body and we're in the house and the burglar gets in, we go hide under the bed, or at least I do. You guys might be heroes. I'm going to hide under the bed. And here's the burglar in the house. And what is cortisol going to do? What's the benefit of it? Well, it's going to give me hyper focus on that burglar. I'm hiding under the bed. I'm not planning Thanksgiving dinner, who I invite or who I don't invite, or what vacation I'm going on in the spring. I am only going to think of where the burglar is, how I call 911, how I get the heck out of there, and how I stay alive. So it keeps me locked on the danger. How many of you have ruminating thoughts about your coworkers or your boss or money or your kids, and you can't seem to unhook from it? Or the argument you had last night with your spouse, and you ruminate on it. You're like, oh God, why can't I just let this go? Well, this is why. Because cortisol sees it as a threat, wants you to stay focused on it, and then we continue down this little hamster wheel loop, and we continue to release cortisol, and then we get stuck and stuck and stuck. Anybody ever feel stuck? Nighttime, especially when you're trying to go to sleep? Yeah, it's fun, right? But this is why cortisol is doing a great job for you. Your brain's working really well. Cortisol also helps you in this time of stress of thinking about your hypersenses. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. These hypersenses that come in. You're under the bed, the burglar's there. Your sound is going to be heightened, right? You need to hear every footstep. You need to know where the burglar is. Your sight's going to be increased, your smell, all of your senses are going to be amplified so that you are prepared to deal with this danger, so that you're aware of it. Think about this in your everyday life. If somebody's chewing too loud and about to send you to the moon, or these fluorescent lights sucking the life out of you, does the smells bother you? Does anybody have hypersenses? And you're like, oh my God, I'm fragile. I'm oversensory. I feel that way, like, oh my God, I can't even be in a loud crowd right now. This is too much for me. Well, that's chronic cortisol. Okay. So let me ask you a question. This is all the physical stuff that happens from stress. What do you think behaviorally happens? What are some of your characteristics, your behaviors, when you are in this limbic response? How do you respond when you're stressed? I love the giggle. It's okay if you don't want to say it out loud. You can tell me about your friend.
You were talking about fight or flight. Sometimes I'm not very confrontational, but I will fight.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You'll argue, you'll
Yes.
verbally fight someone.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
don't like confrontation, but you're
No.
ready to go.
I hate it.
You get it? Yeah. So maybe you're aggressive or you're passive aggressive. I'm pretty good at that one. Yeah. So you'll fight. What are some of your other behaviors?
I sometimes
Shut down. Yeah, you're a flight response. You're like, get away, don't talk to me, come see me next week when you fixed your stuff, and then you can come back and see me. Uh-huh. Shut down. What are some of the other behaviors characteristics? Tears. Yeah. Yeah. And when you're teary and crying, do you find yourself lashing out? Do you find yourself snippy? Do you find yourself being very judgmental? Everybody else in the world's an idiot except me. Why can't they figure this thing out? Yeah. Yeah. How about you? What are some of your short-tempered shutdown? Yay! Welcome to being human, everyone. I'm going to guess that these are all the characteristics and behaviors that aren't on your dating profile, they aren't on your resume, but we all have them, okay? And I hope that you understand from this talk, if there's anything that you get away from this today, is that you're not broken. You don't need anger management classes. You're not a bad person. You're not a bad mom. You're not a bad spouse. You are simply in a limbic response, and these behaviors come out because if you are in actual danger, you're on the battlefield, you're not like, hey, Chuck, would you like to come in for a spot of tea and figure this out? No, you're going to be like, get away from me. I'm going to shoot you, right? We're going to behaviorally push people away, throw darts and arrows, or run away because of this response. So there's nothing wrong with you. We just have to learn how to manage it and deal with it. Does it make sense? Questions, comments before I move on. Is this helpful? So I've painted all of this stuff about the limbic response, right? All of your bad behavior, pointed out all your bad behaviors and why you're such a horrible person. Okay, now we're going to talk about the good stuff. So the other brain state I want to talk about is the prefrontal cortex. This is your thinking brain. This is your logical, analytical, big picture thinking, strategizing brain. It's the part of our brain when we're cool, calm, and collected. When we are in this brain state, our resources return back to the midline of our body, the parasympathetic nervous state, the rest and digest state. Our immunity turns back on, our reproduction turns back on, our digestive system, our endocrine system, all of our systems are back fully uploaded, right? And we're in this really great state of homeostasis. But we're not often there, right? We're always triggered, running around, like dealing with stuff and life and things and all that. How are you behaviorally when you're in your prefrontal state? You can refer to your dating profile or to your resume. You're calm. Yeah. How else? What are some of the other behaviors that are? Let's just pointed out all the bad. Let's like celebrate your good a little bit here. Focus. Focus. Yeah, it's your thinking brain. You're going to focus really well. What else? Organized. You're a good listener. You're empathetic. Here's the thing. Have any of you done business skills training or leadership training? All the money that you spend on these great tools. You read self-help books, all of this. Here's a great way to be an effective listener. Here's how you do reflective listening. Here's how you lead and motivate teams. Here's how you respond instead of react, right? All the tools that we have, guess what? If we're here, screw those tools, you're not getting to them. I found this out on a construction site because I'm highly trained. I've done 25 years of personal development work. I'm like, yeah, I know how to manage and lead people, and I was really good at it. I'd have a construction site of tons of guys, and all of the leaders would come into my construction trailer. I'd have the foreman and the superintendents and all the guys. And when I was good, when I was in my prefrontal states, man, we were high-fiving out of there. We were like, yeah, we're going to get this job done. And everybody was in a great mood. When somebody pissed me off, didn't go over very well. And do you think I gave a crap about any of them? I was argumentative. I was angry. I didn't want to listen to their problems. I shut them down. I told them to take a hike. I didn't care. I was aggressive. All of these things. Was I a good leader? Absolutely not. Did I have the potential to be a good leader? Absolutely yes. And so I went back and I looked and I'm like, what is wrong with me? How is it that I'm like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde? Does anybody feel like that? Right? You go home and suddenly you snap and your kids are like, whoa, what did I do? And you're like, ah. Or at work and you lose it. You're not bad. You shifted brain states. Now, here's the crazy thing. These two brain states do not work at the same time. I'm going to say that again because it's really important to understand. When you are in a prefrontal state, you are not in a limbic state. When you are in a limbic state, you are not in a prefrontal state. The seesaw. Now that's a big deal because if we can manage that, we can manage everything. It's the keys to the kingdom. But nobody teaches us how to manage our brain states. They give you more skills of how to be a better listener, better skills of how to stay calm in a time of need, but they're not talking about it from a brain-based perspective. And when we look at it from a science perspective, and we have a checklist and we can figure out how to do it, super easy, right? We all want a to-do list. We want the rules instead of this nebulous thing of, oh, be mindful. What the hell is that? How do I be mindful? How do I stay calm? It's just biology. Interesting thing about these two brain states, this limbic center is formed in vitro. When you're in your mom's belly and she experiences stress, so do you. It makes sense though, right? This is our survival mechanism. We have to have it since birth. And we use it our entire lives to make sure that we stay alive. We're not walking off buildings or stepping in front of traffic, right? This is our limbic response at play. Our prefrontal state, though, is not fully myelinated till we're 25 years old. Uh-oh, right? This guy's got a lot of experience. Plus, we're 5 times more predisposed to be here. Uh-oh, it's hard, right? It's no different than going to the gym and exercising one muscle, right? If I went to the gym every day and I exercised this muscle called the limbic center, I'm gonna get strong, right? And every once in a while I come in and I have my vacations to the mountains or whatever I do and I exercise the prefrontal state, but then I'm over here angry at the people at work and worried about money and all of this stuff, right? Well, when I go in the morning to go pick up something heavy, which one's gonna probably win? The one I've exercised. The brain is no different. The brain is neuroplastic. We actually grow gray matter in our brain. That's crazy, right? When we are chronically in a limbic response, the center of our brain is thicker and denser. But if we chronically exercise the prefrontal state, the front of our brain is going to be thicker and denser. We could do an autopsy of someone, not know much about them, right? You might know them as your great uncle, Uncle Eddie. And we do an autopsy and I could look at it and go, ooh, man, he was a worried wart. He was stressed out all his life. He was in this chronic fear state. And you'd be like, oh my God, he couldn't see the bright side of anything. I could tell that from his brain. On the contrary, Aunt Mabel, who is the sweetest thing in the world, who sees the sunshine and everything, I wouldn't know her, but I look at her brain and go, wow, she's got a thick prefrontal. Oh yeah. She was rainbows and sunshine. You're like, whoa, how do you know that? Because we actually grow gray matter in the brain. And the more we exercise it, the more we strengthen it, the easier it is to use it, right? If we set the weights down here, start lifting the weights here, we're going to tend to be more positive and not have stress affect us as much. Does that make sense? I call the limbic center the frat boy of the brain because it doesn't need any environment to function. Think of a frat house, right? They're probably, she giggles, probably eating ramen, probably drinking, for sure, probably smoking, probably staying up all night and partying. And that party goes out into the front lawn and out into the street, and a car comes and everybody gets out of the way because that's the limbic response. They didn't care what environment it's in. It's going to work. The prefrontal, though, is the diva. This prefrontal cortex needs good quality sleep. Think about that. Have you ever, with small kids, right, or whatever it may be, stress about work? If you've only slept 3 hours, which brain state are you going to be more predisposed to be in the next day? You're going to not be focused. You're going to have hard time staying on task. You're going to want to go home early. You're going to be snippy, right? You always go, oh, I just didn't sleep enough. Well, here's the why. In order to access the prefrontal, you need good quality sleep. How about our food? Anybody think about food for brain states, or do you just think about food of how you're going to look in your genes, right? When we talk about foods and diets, most of the time it's body-based. But food is really important to the brain. If our blood sugar goes low, you probably notice this with your kids, especially. When our blood sugar goes low, our brain goes, oh my God, danger. Our brains are still primitive. So it thinks you didn't kill your buffalo that day, right? And oh my gosh, danger, we're gonna not survive. It doesn't realize Safeway's down the street or I got a bar in my back, right? So the brain perceives danger when there's low blood sugar, and what does it do? It goes into a limbic state. Behaviorally, hangry, food mood. My teenagers are kings of this, right? You get irritable, you get shaky, you get all of that sympathetic arousal from having low blood sugar. Make sense? Yeah. There are lots of things that trigger us into a limbic response. What do you think are some of the other things that might trigger us there? Any other thoughts? Being in pain, yes. Yeah, that's actual, your brain is sensing the danger. Yeah, so being in pain, people are grouchy and grumpy and hard to be around. How about our own internal thoughts? Does anybody have that roommate that lives in your head that's like super judgy? She giggles. Yeah, she's got several. Woo! Don't worry, I won't check you into any wards anytime soon. But it's true. We all have this inner critic that's like, you're not doing enough, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're unlovable, you're not a good mom, you're a bad at what you do, and it's like this thing. Well, your brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and reality. So here we go. Oh my gosh, I am not good enough. I'm not lovable. There's lots of things that trigger us into these limbic states.
Is that why self-affirmation works so well?
Yes, a self-affirmation can move us into those prefrontal states. It's a great question. So, some limbic triggers: lack of sleep, blood sugar imbalance, internal thoughts and beliefs, our feelings. Sure, brain doesn't know. Brain's like, oh, you got a feeling, must be real. Danger. Social situations, this is a big one. Colleagues, spouses, kids. People could say something to us that sends us to the moon. Has anybody ever had constructive criticism? Yes. And how did you take it? Your answer is probably dependent on which brain state you were in. If you're in a prefrontal state and someone gives you constructive criticism, you're like, yeah, you're right, I probably could be more organized. Thanks for the tip. Could you show me how to do it? If you're in a limbic state and they tell you to be more organized, woo, they better watch out. Yeah. This is simply your brain state. Memories can also trigger limbic responses. Okay. Thoughts, questions, comments about any of this? I want to give you some tools, but I just want to make sure that there's nothing that you're wanting to add or say or ask before we get into the tools.
I don't want to like divert the subject, but I'm curious now after looking at that picture of the brain. So my daughter does neurofeedback.
Yeah.
What parts of the brain is that? Is it not really trying to fix? I know, but it helps, and you know that. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
After.
Well, so the interesting thing about neurofeedback, number one, she's going to have a brain map. So we're going to be able to see where, do you know where her electrodes are placed? Are they frontal or?
I've seen the,
Okay.
I don't know for sure because of COVID, I don't go in there, but I've seen them place like the sticky stuff here.
Yeah.
And here.
Okay, so does she have anxiety?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Depending on where they're putting the electrodes, it sends a small frequency to the brain to stimulate. So if there's regions of the brain that are underperforming, so people that have an underperforming prefrontal cortex can actually have anxiety because they're not able to emotionally regulate at times. So there are different things. So it's not necessarily stimulating prefrontal versus limbic. It could be in certain situations placed in a place for the downregulation of limbic response to have the brain feel calmer. So yeah, really great question. We can talk more about it.
Yeah, I don't want to divert this, but
No, it's great. We
curious.
surely can talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions about this? Let me ask you just a quick question. What do you see this new information providing you for your life? How can you use this? I mean, of course, I'm going to give you tools. What's that?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Do you think that when your spouse is like really grumpy, you can go, oh, their brain's doing a brain thing and have a little grace? Do you find that maybe when you're on edge and just ready to like quit your job and move to Jamaica, that you can go, oh, it's my brain. My brain thinks there's a threat in this situation. Think that's a possibility? Any other things you can see by this information? Okay. Great. So first and foremost, the most important tool is figuring out what your limbic response is. You have to get familiar with it in order to be able to deal with it. So start to notice over the next day or 2 or 3 or your lifetime, whatever you choose to take on, what does your limbic response feel like? Do you notice it physically first? Like suddenly like, oh my God, my heart's racing. Must be in a limbic response. Do you notice it that you are really judgy and internally you're like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to quit my job? Or whatever thoughts are coming in. Do you feel a sensation in your body? Anger. Unable to concentrate could be a great telltale that you're in a limbic state. So start to, number one, get familiar with what your limbic response is, okay? And start to realize how this has been impacting your life. Maybe your relationships are, you know, you're creating conflict in your relationships because you're in this limbic state. You're not performing your job as well. You're not progressing in your job. Maybe you're stuck in something you don't want to do, a relationship, a job, or whatever. What's that?
Mentally unhappy.
Mentally unhappy. What is that robbing you from? It's robbing you from your life and your well-being, right? We talked about the physical ailments that can actually happen from this thing called stress, but it's really just a bio response. This is a big deal. It's a big deal to learn how to manage this. Okay, you guys want some tools? Or do you want me just to leave and be like, hey, guess what? You guys are done. Glad you learned it all. I'm gonna leave you high and dry. No. Okay. First and foremost, because our limbic response is very somatic, you all felt something in your body. A heart racing, you may have felt that shoulder thing, the jaw clenching. It's really important to deal with a physical reaction with a physical response. So I want everybody to stand up. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, this is okay. But I want you to shake, like get after it, shake. I don't want to be the only crazy woman here. Shake your hands, your legs, whatever you feel comfortable with. Shake your body, like your legs, your head, your arms. Should have some music going.
I just have to. I can't do much.
Oh yeah, be
more.
careful. Make sure you're not overdoing with what your body's able to do. Pump your hands, roll out your shoulders. Okay, you can sit. How do you feel? Looser. More focused, more awake, clearer. Okay, why does shaking work? Well, we see animals do it all the time. Maybe you have dogs. They shake at the thunder, they shake at fireworks, right?
Shake the water off.
They shake the water off. Animals, mammals, we are mammals. They know how to deal with the hormonal release in their body. We don't. We're a bunch of buffoons running around stuffing our limbic response and then like blowing up because our kids spilled milk. Right? If we shake, we dissipate the hormones. That's what the animals are doing. They get an influx of adrenaline and cortisol and they use it up. They're completing the fight and flight response. We don't, right? We're not fighting as much as we'd like to. We don't. We calm ourselves down. We gain control and we don't punch someone. Very good job. But It doesn't help your own body. The flee response, I don't see you in Jamaica selling coconuts right now, so you haven't fled yet. We suck it up and we deal with it. We stuff it. We deal with it and stuff it. And at the end of the day, it's usually our family that gets the brunt of it. Shake throughout the day. It seems silly, even when you're not in a limbic response. Definitely shake when you're in limbic. When you find yourself losing focus or you're edgy or you're whatever, shake. But also every hour on the hour, set an alarm, right? If your watch has the little breathe app and it tells you to breathe, shake first, okay? For you that have kids, put on a dance party, have them do jumping jacks. Help your children start to understand that they can emotionally and physically regulate themselves, because there is no better tool than we can teach our kids. The first time I learned this information, my kids were preteen. They're now 16 and 18. Thank God I have it. My older son is so limbic, so fast, and man, can he be the devil. He can be an ornery child. He doesn't mean to be, but if I didn't know that, he'd be yelling at me and I'd be yelling back, and we'd get into this big battle, and I'm like, okay, I don't do that. He gets all heated and in an uproar, and I go, oh my God, my kid's in a limbic response. How can I support him? If you do, go hit your bag for a minute. He has a heavy bag in his room, and he'll go pound it out. Now here, the whole house shakes, right? He's getting after it. Comes up and he goes, thanks, Mom. I was just in a limbic response. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing, right? I didn't know this information when I was younger. It came out on a construction site as very aggressive, very ugly, because I didn't know how to emotionally regulate. If we can teach our kids this, and if we can learn this now, by simple things like shaking, they're gonna feel so much power, right? They're not gonna think they're broken. They're gonna have a way to manage something in a very powerful way. The second exercise is to breathe. And I'm not just talking about breathing how you are right now. Go ahead and close your eyes. I'm gonna take you through an example of breathing. So just notice where your breath naturally is. If you're breathing in through your nose or into your mouth. Now I want your breath to go down into your belly. And you may need to physically push your belly out. You can even place one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest to help you understand where your breath is. Noticing which part of your body is rising and falling. And to breathe into your belly, really push your belly out on the inhale. Pull your belly in on your exhale. Now I want you to breathe in for a count of 4. Out for a count of 8. Have your exhale be twice as long as your inhale. Really extend that exhale out. In for 4, out for 8. I won't count for you because I don't want it to be too slow or too fast. But just a couple more cycles with your breath deep down into your belly. You can go ahead and open your eyes. How do you feel? He's like, I don't want to open my eyes. I mean, I want to come back to reality. What are you talking about? You feel good? Amazing. This level of calm, this level of groundedness. We're in the prefrontal now. Your resources are returned, and you're in the parasympathetic state. Why do we breathe like this? It's always important to know the why of things, right? Because somebody says, oh, count to 10 or go shake or whatever. Understanding the why is really important. When our exhale is really long, that is your body's way of controlling your brain state. How many times have you tried to outthink a limbic response? Oh, don't be mad. Come on. They don't mean to do it. You should be better. You should calm down, especially when somebody tells you to calm down. That doesn't go very well either, right? You can't really outthink a limbic response because you'd have to be in your prefrontal in order to do that. It doesn't work that way. So this breathing, I love that you're young. This breathing exercise is having your body be a remote control for your brain. It's usually the other way around. Your brain thinks a thought, it goes, oh my God, panic, there's danger. Your body physically responds. It engages, the heart races, all the stuff happens, and that's how it usually goes down. The brain is controlling the body. In this way of breathing, with the long, slow exhale into your belly, because this is how we breathe in a parasympathetic state. This is how we breathe in a sympathetic state. Oh my God, short and shallow breaths, right? Belly breathing, calm and relaxed. And the body's telling the brain to chill out. There's no danger. And the brain's like, yes, there is. The body's like, no, there's not. And the brain goes, oh, well, if you're breathing like that, there must not be danger. I'm going to chill out for a minute. These are the breathing techniques they teach the SEALs or the Army or the police force, because they have to be in a prefrontal state to make a good decision so they're not shooting the wrong person. Because if they're in a limbic state, they're reactionary and they're going to pull a trigger. So we do this kind of breathing to down regulate, set the weights down in the limbic state, okay? The last tool is kind of fun. This is to help that ruminating, chattering brain that we all have. So if you think of the child in the grocery store, I'm just going to give you an example, and we'll pretend it wasn't my child, but it was. Throwing a tantrum in the middle of the grocery store aisle because he didn't get Fruit Loops. There's lots of approaches I could have done. Yelled at him, because we know how well that works, right? Doesn't work. I could pretend I'm not his mom, which I've done and didn't work out very well either, because he got more upset because I just left him. But the tool that I found being most effective is making sure that he is distracted. Hey dude, I know you want the Fruit Loops. You do me a favor, and we're really on the search for the biggest grapefruit I can find. And like, I want to have a competition with you. I think I can find a bigger grapefruit. He's, no way, Mom, I'm gonna find the bigger one. Let's go. So we go find who can find the bigger grapefruit. Distraction, right? It works, you have kids.
I've done it with
Adults,
that have
yes,
anxiety.
absolutely. 100% adults with anxiety. Well, we're gonna do it for ourselves, for our own inner chattery dialogue that will not let us go to sleep because we're upset that Bob didn't file the spreadsheet he said he was going to file, or fill in the blank, right? Our brain is hooked onto that thing, thinking it's danger, thinking it is a problem, and really it's not. So if we distract our brain, because it's throwing a tantrum, we give it something else to do, and then that thing will go away. It's just a different problem to solve. It's wanting to solve a problem, but that problem is giving you a limbic response. If you have a non-limbic response problem to solve, i.e. find the biggest grapefruit, there's no consequence, right? We're not going into that limbic state. So here's how we do it. Anybody played categories before? It's similar. I'm gonna say a category and a constraint. I just want you to throw out some answers, okay? Tell me animals that start with the letter B.
Bear.
Bear.
Bat.
Buffalo. I'm gonna help.
Bobcat.
Bobcat. Bulldog. We can do proper names too, like barracuda.
Bug.
A what?
A bug.
Bug. Yeah, bugs. Butterflies. Beetles. Reason I didn't give you this exercise earlier because you wouldn't pay attention to a thing I'm saying, because I know you're still thinking of every animal that starts with the letter B. Bison. Right? Hi. I know you guys are still going. That is, yeah, yeah. And this is why this exercise is so powerful, because I know there's like 3 more that you want to shout out right now, because that's always what happens. But imagine solving that problem versus the worry about money or your job or fill in the blank, right? So maybe it's animals that begin with the letter B. Maybe it's a different letter. Maybe you go through the alphabet and find an animal like we did in road trips with the car with our parents for them to distract us, to keep us from throwing a fit in the back seat. Hey, animal that's A, animal that's B. Maybe there's a rhyming game. Boys' names that rhyme with Tommy. Oh my God, you guys are going already.
This is silly, but you know what really works with my kids?
Yeah.
Like they'll be fighting to the death, and I'll say, okay, we're going to find the person that finds the porta potty first wins.
Yes,
Oh my God,
competition.
it's insane.
Well, it's the same way when you're driving, how many different license plates states.
Yes.
It's just-
Yes, absolutely right. Because our brain is tantruming, we are finding, and you guys naturally do this, you're finding creative ways to manage that tantruming brain or children, right, in a new way. So yeah, continue that with yourself, with your kids, colleagues, like, hey, let's have a little friendly competition right now, right? When you see that there's a tantrum. But it is really helpful to get you unhooked from that limit state.
Does it help to voice it out loud?
Sure.
So like if your brain is stuck on something that's causing you some anxiety and you're thinking of animals would be, because for me, I think if I try to think of something mentally, it'll just get jumbled with the
Yes.
anxiety that I'm having.
Absolutely. Write it out. So it's a great, very, very valid point. If you're trying to think of something, it could get jumbled in with the other things you're thinking about, which is also the reason that like when you're trying to fall asleep, counting sheep doesn't work because we can count and worry at the same time. And that's similar to what you're saying. I can think of animals and worry at the same
Yep,
time.
me too.
So if I write it down and maybe you draw like
Or
a
if I
little,
have to say it out loud.
say it out loud, find a way that where you're keeping your focus on, right? That it's, and you, maybe you do it, you have to do it within 10 minutes, but as you go, you time yourself for 5 minutes or whatever. Finding things to keep you focused on that task. Perfect. Great. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
How do you like chemicals affect the brain?
Yeah.
Like, that helps you calm down. Or
Well,
Not
let me tell you
necessarily
something about
stimulant.
smoking. And we could have a whole nother hour conversation of the effects of chemicals on the brain, but I want to tell you something. Think about a smoker. They go outside, right? So your day's crazy and you're like, oh my God, it's 11 o'clock, it's time for my cigarette break. Yay. You go outside, you light up, what do you do? What do you think is helping you manage the stress? This, the nicotine, the chemical that is, or is it it's the pause from work. You're going outside, you're getting fresh air, you're taking a respite from the craziness of the day. You get to escape and you're breathing. This is the main reason that smoking is helping. And we can talk about the chemicals later. We can set up time and I can give you all the details of the chemicals and I can show you SPECT images and functional MRIs of what chemicals actually do to the brain and the function of the brain. But that's why smoking is effective. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So thank you guys. It's been an absolute pleasure coming here today. I always have so much fun doing these talks. Any questions that you have, please let me know. Contact me if I can be of support. I do individual coaching. I do group coaching. I speak to groups all the time. I do stuff for corporate. So I'm here as a resource. And I have business cards if you, so you don't have to, yeah, I got them up here. You don't have to say this, or you can. Any other questions, closing thoughts? Is this helpful for you guys?
Very.
Yeah. Any big takeaways that you're like, okay, I'm gonna use this with my kids or my,
I think if you just find sticky notes.
love it.
Like you,
Help each other. You guys are working together.
Same letter, right?
Yeah.
I have an adult son and daughter who have 2 children, and they have anxiety. And they're teaching the children.
Yeah.
And so this is good.
Yeah, and you know, I give classes, so if they ever want to sit in, just for this was a 45-minute talk, right? Maybe an hour, because I talk a lot. But you know, just this little bit of information, just this little aha of like, oh my God, I can actually do something about this.
Being able to relate.
Being able to relate to it and know like there is something to do about it other than, oh, I should go down a yoga retreat or I need to do a meditation. I need to learn how to meditate. No, you don't. No, you really don't. Meditation can actually cause stress, so let's not do it if that's what it does for you, right? Good. Yeah. Great. Thank you guys so much. It was so fun to be here with you all.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.